Morgan with the Marriage Initiative, and I am just delighted today to introduce you to Dr. Robert Lewis. Robert has been an author, pastor, and trailblazer in Christian men's ministry for 40 years. You might know his best-selling book, Raising a Modern Day Knight, or recognize him through the Men's Fraternity Bible study that he developed in 1990 while he was a teaching pastor and directional leader at Fellowship Bible Church in Little Rock. Millions of men worldwide have benefited from the men's fraternity curriculum, which led to his Better Man group study designed to appeal to millennials and connect men in relationships that launched in 2020. Robert's written numerous books and Bible studies, including Rocking the Roles, Building a Win-Win Marriage, and Building Teamwork in Your Marriage. He's been featured on Family Life Today and Focus on the Family, and in magazines, including Leadership, Real Man, and Stand Firm. Robert obtained his master's degree in New Testament Greek and master's in divinity from Western Seminary in Portland. He earned his Doctor of Ministry degree from Talbot Theological Seminary. Robert, thank you so much for being here.
Well, Amy, thank you for inviting me. It's a delight to join you today.
Well, let's talk about how everything got started back in 1990 with your appeal to men.
Yeah, well, what happened was I actually helped start the church that I was pastoring. And after being there for about 10 years, some of the men of the church came and said, hey, let's do something specific for the men. And, at that point in time, churches around the country did not have real well-defined men's ministry. And I hate to report this, but even today, over half the churches in America don't have some form of formal way of men meeting and studying together around manhood and things that are priorities to men. It's just not happening in America today, which is a huge loss for men. But these guys came to me and said, let's do something for the men. I think it was the culmination, as I mentioned to you when we first talked, the result of the social revolution of the 70s that by 1990 had really infected all of American life, and men were feeling deposed from their patriarchal standing, and women were invading the workforce and leaving home and challenging them in different ways. And I think it just kind of rocked men's world. And so these guys were saying, hey, let's talk about what it means to be a man in this new world. And I got to tell you, when they asked me that, I thought to myself, I'm not really sure. Yeah. So I spent some time studying. We got probably 40 guys together, did a men's study. It was honestly just kind of so-so, but it had piqued my interest because I grew up in a home where my mom and dad really struggled. My dad was an alcoholic, which meant I didn't really connect with him emotionally. So I didn't get a lot of what I call father food, which is hard instruction or directional instruction. So the whole situation, just being requested to do something for the men, really excited me. I spent some time doing that. And in the process, things I started discovering really started impacting me personally. And so when 1990 rolled around, I took some of the information I was learning that was helping me and told the guys, I'm on a journey to be a man. So I'm just going to share with you what I'm learning. So I started doing that. And for whatever reason, God used it, blessed it. It connected with a lot of men. Men began to respond. Those 40 or so men soon grew to 300. That 300 then through mid 1990s grew to over 1,000. And then by the time we got to 1996, 97, there were probably 1,500 plus men coming every Wednesday morning to our men's fraternity to learn what it means to be a man and how to live out a more well-defined biblical manhood.
Oh, and that is just so interesting, and how that, men really needed that. What is wrong with our culture? Why are men so confused?
Men are confused because the family is confused today. I mentioned the social revolution that happened. I think what we've done is turned the family on its head. And so family structure within closed doors, men and women don't relate well together. We have a lot of fractured homes. I think the whole priority of family has been lessened in our society today, and you can see that represented by the number of divorce homes that we have today. I mean, it's so sad that you can report today that 44% of kids growing up today don't even have a dad at home. And so just think about that. 4 out of every 10. One of my daughters is a school teacher, and she told me, when school starts, after the first week, she can look in the students' faces and know which one of them come from an intact family and which one of them come from a broken family, just by the way they respond and interact. So we've got fractured families, and as I mentioned before, when you and I talked, I think for men in particular, a lot of dads not only are not at home, but those who are at home don't know what to do as dads. They lack father instruction. So they bring home a paycheck, but oftentimes that's all they bring home. They don't bring home emotional connection to their kids. They don't know what to say to their sons and daughters that give them life instruction. So basically, they're around, but they're not feeding their kids the kind of things that I would call the substantive things to grow up with that'll make them stable in life when they finally do leave the nest. And we see that, we've done national surveys, and what you find in our national surveys that we've done with the Barna company is that so many men today report that they're lonely, that they don't know what it means to be a man. They couldn't even answer that question. And they feel wounded because dad wasn't there for them.
And then if they don't have it, it's very difficult for them to give it.
Yes, that's right. And the question is, if they don't have it, where do they go to even get it?
Yeah.
Most men are very fearful to let down their guard and admit they don't know what it means to be a dad. They don't know how to treat a woman. They don't even know how to be married. They got married, but I mean, the worst thing is after you're married, what do I do? And most men don't know. They think other men know, but they're afraid to let down their guard and be vulnerable and ask other men. And unless there is some organized way of bringing men together and making them feel safe where they can let down their guard and find that most of the men in the room are just like them. They need help, they need instruction, they need encouragement, that kind of thing. Then those men kind of suffer alone. And that's what we've got today in America. We've got a huge population of young adult men who are just suffering alone, thinking they should know what to do, but knowing they don't. And so when churches understand that and form ways to bring men together, again, a church that has something for men, just a meeting for men, the men tend to do substantially better in their overall satisfaction in life in every area. The sad thing is most churches don't.
Well, you started that with the men's fraternity, and then that has transformed. Could you tell us a little bit about the journey, kind of what men's fraternity was and what that's changed into? Because I think we've got some solutions to this problem, right?
Yeah. Well, men's fraternity started with me asking a basic question and that is this: does the Bible define manhood? And when I first asked that question, as a guy who'd gone through seminary, had multiple degrees, I couldn't find an answer. That's the amazing thing. I could find characteristics of manhood. You've got your Davids and your Abrahams and your Pauls, and they exhibit certain things that we would call manly traits. But to say, what is a man and have a simple definition, we lack that. And you see that in American culture all the time. You see, dads on the sideline of a game yelling at their son to man up and be a man and those kind of things. But what I found in asking men, okay, guys, you tell your son to man up. What does it mean to be a man? Then they go dark. They're not really sure how to fill that blank space in. So we're kind of exhorting something that we ourselves haven't even been able to define. And I couldn't define that. And I was a 30-year-old young pastor, and guys asking me, teach us about manhood, and I couldn't even find a definition. So I spent the first part of my personal manhood journey answering that question from the Bible, so that I could be satisfied. And the Bible does have a definition. It's more in the story of creation. You find the elements of manhood that can be formulated into a definition. And I think the success of men's fraternity was doing that, revealing that, and sharing it with the men. And Amy, the men came alive when I could stand up there and say, okay, guys, let's look at the first three chapters of Genesis in God's interaction with the first man, Adam. He laid down the boundaries of manhood that we can lift out and use as a definition for manhood. And so we did that. And, I shared that with them. And then we said, let's then build a lifestyle of manhood off of that definition. And the definition allows you to do that because the definition is these four interactions of God with Adam. One being that Adam was charged with courageously following God's word. That was the very thing that started the interaction between God and man. He said, "You're living in a dangerous environment, Adam. There's an enemy out there. You're going to have to listen to me because manhood's not natural; it's supernatural. So you've got to have my instruction to make it." Secondly, he brought a woman to a man, and he said, okay, another boundary of manhood is you've got to love and protect a woman. And from the beginning of time, what have women been crying out for? A man who will love them, honor them as an equal, and protect them. Thirdly, he said, I'm going to give you a job to do. He gave him a garden. But he said, I want you to do well at this job, cultivate it, because I'll have other jobs for you to do. So one of the marks of manhood is that you're going to excel at the work God gives you to do. And it's a training ground. And Paul later, thousands of years later, says that you don't just work a job, you have a calling, and that calling is from the Lord, and you should do it well. And then the last thing is that you should create a better world, and you do that through children. In fact, the very first command given to a man was be a dad. And all that's in Genesis. So we say these are the four pillars of manhood. And then we build off of that all these applications so you can succeed in those four things. They're not the only things a man does, but if a man finishes his life and he's been successful in following God's word, he's loved and protected the woman that God brought in his life. That starts with dating and all the way through marriage. He's worked a job in a way that he's honored God, and he's raised a healthy next generation to bless the world beyond him. If he's done those four things, I can tell you how man's going to finish. He's going to finish like Abraham finished, satisfied with his life, knowing he's done a good job. And so that's what I shared through men's fraternity, built out a curriculum that goes beyond those borders, and it connected with men's hearts, and it grew into a curriculum that then, with the help of Lifeway, the Southern Baptist Publishing Company, it went around the world, and millions of men have been through that curriculum.
Well, it just, even the way you describe it again, I can see the light and the excitement in your face. And even though I'm a woman, it makes so much sense. You want your husband, your to be that guy. And I'm so glad. I've been married for almost 28 years, and I'm glad to say I have one of the good ones. But still, it's you can see that excitement and that energy and what that would mean when a man would feel equipped to live out those ways, like you said, a life that doesn't have regrets, a life where he's not cleaning up messes and doing that.
That's right. And when a man gets clear about his manhood, like I said, there are all kinds of other things that a man will do. But when he's clear about the core of his manhood and he can keep referencing there to keep his path kind of stable and those kind of things, no one, I can promise you this, I've heard this over and over, no one is happier than the woman that he's attached to, either through dating or marriage. And I always used to laugh and say, when I was teaching men's fraternity at our church, we would sell tapes of those teachings. Guys would pick them up. But I was always told we would sell more tapes every week in men's fraternity to the wives than the men, because the wives wanted to hear, what are we saying? And then the wives would come up to me and say, my man has never been better and never been happier, because he's clear about who he is, and he's clear about the big questions of life. And all that does is stabilize a man emotionally and give him tracks to run on that makes him feel safe. And there's nothing that a man wants more in his life. You can ask any guy. There's nothing that a man wants to do better than to just come through, than just to succeed and get results. And when a man gets results, he feels great about his manhood.
Oh, I could, that resonates. Having sons too, you do. You want to succeed. You want to do the right thing and do it well. I mean, I think everyone does, but I think it, resonates with men in a special way.
That's right, it does. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
So you've noticed, and you did a bunch of research kind of in the mid to late 2000s, that men's fraternity, while successful, kind of needed a little
Yeah, when we got into the early 2000s, 2010 or so, I had some guys come to me, and it was not because of the videos. It just that there was a new generation called millennials who thought different, were more relationally inclined, and those kind of things. And the guys were saying we need to do something for these younger men. And at the time, I really wasn't sure I'd connect with them, but with enough encouragement, we put together a task force. And then in 2018, I met with men in a hotel using older men to invite younger men to come to those meetings around tables so they could spend a lot of time talking with one another. And then I would talk for about 35 minutes and speak to manhood in the 21st century. And I was just doing it at the hotel to, encourage men in the city of Little Rock. But we had another huge response. And the next year, the size of that double. We had to go to a massive hotel. We had 700 guys coming. And then from that, I had some men say, we need to take this nationally. And so we formed an organization called Better Man, where we would use older men to invite younger men on the journey of manhood, with these older men just kind of serving as mentors, where they would love on these guys and serve these guys for 11 weeks and talk about the basics of manhood, which we, under the surface, knew that many of these young men had never heard this material, which proved to be true. And the response was, again, just so overwhelming from what I call a man starved culture.
Well,
They're
that's what you said, was that the millennials really kind of have a whole new twist on this, because as the culture is changing, you can't watch any TV show without, I mean, the guy is the butt of every joke, even the commercials,
that's
during the football games.
right.
It's,
That's right. And then we developed this concept called toxic masculinity, where men are the problem for everything. And I will say this: a man who is clueless and is just flailing at his life and trying anything and everything to define himself usually causes a lot of damage. He really does. So there's some truth in that, but the cure is not to just blame the guy. The cure is to come alongside the guy and offer him some encouragement, uh, first with a relationship, because men are millennials, according to the Barna research that we did, millennials are the loneliest generation of men in American history. They're connected through media, but as far as real relationships where they're sharing and interacting with other guys in a meaningful way, it's just not happening. So men are getting more and more isolated, more and more lonely. They are more and more directionless. And if you put that on an assembly line, what you're just producing is tragedy. You're just rolling off tragedy. You're not rolling off men who are going to be difference makers in the next generation. You're rolling off the assembly line people who are going to be problems for the next generation.
well, and so that's what you notice, that this millennial and Gen X and Gen Z guy is different, and he connects
That's right.
differently. And so you decided it would, that, from the research in that, to invite the older men, two men in 50 plus or 40 plus,
40 plus. Mhm.
40 plus, to invite another, so they don't just come to sit in some seats.
No.
They sit
In
around a
fact,
table, right?
we don't put them in rows. We put them around tables. And every round table, we call them tables of 8. And we get 2 older men, and we give them 4 to 6 months to identify 6 men under 40 in their sphere that they could invite to join them, and not to join them because they got something they're going to teach them, but to join them in a journey, an 11-week journey where together, all 8 of them explore manhood together. And the older men just serve as more experienced men who can say, when a younger guy's sharing something, he can say, I tried that, and tell them the results of that. Or they can say, let me tell you what I did, and just let the other guys hear that, or the truths that are being spoken in those sessions, because there is a teaching time. They can say, guys, I wish I would have known that when I was your age. So that by the end of that 11-week journey, by inviting them in advance, they've already formed a relationship, and relationships are so important to millennials. But by inviting them in advance and forming a relationship, and then having 11 weeks together where you share at heartfelt levels around a table, by the end of those 11 weeks, you formed, and we see this all the time, lasting friendships. And some of those table groups that finish, they don't disband, they continue on. And so that's one key to reaching younger men, is to do it around relationships. And then the Barna research reinforced that. It shared that younger men under 40 who have even one confidant in their life, they report in surveys that their sense of life satisfaction or their sense of well-being is 2 to 3 times higher than other young men under 40 who don't have a close friendship. So we know all this works, and the thing that's missing is good biblical information. And I told you in a previous time we were together, Amy, that the best way to reach young men with the teaching of the Bible and Jesus Christ is not, I don't think it's to invite them to church. It's to invite them to a manhood journey, because young men love the word manhood and they want to be better men. And if you say, hey, let's explore manhood together, and you come together and you're talking about manhood, and then after a few weeks, the Bible is introduced as one thing you can go to get insight, men around relationships are going, okay, I'll listen to that. And then it becomes transformative.
So it's a way, it is a gospel, it's a gospel outreach, but in a way that's really touching hearts.
That's right.
And the other thing that I thought was so interesting about Better Man and so beneficial for our marriage champions here, people in churches, you have provided all this curriculum at no charge, correct?
That's correct. When we were doing it in Little Rock, and some of my friends from Dallas, actually, who I had been in another ministry with, they said, we want to help you take this curriculum national. And so we formed Better Man with a vision, not just for this material, but we actually believed we would develop even different new material. In fact, I just finished another video series that we filmed. So we're putting all this information on that. And the guys asked me, would you write this curriculum, help us film it, and those kind of things? I said I would, but I told my buddies, I said, I've got one request. And they said, what's that? And I said, that you fund it and all of it's free to the public. And they agreed to do that. So we have an organization, a betterman.com website, and all our materials are on that website and can be viewed and downloaded for free and shared. And we want people to do that. So we don't sell anything. We give everything away.
Well, and that just makes it so easy for our marriage champions or church leaders. It's pretty much, it's a plug and play. Really, all they need is 2 older men who will invite, 3 younger men each,
Yep.
and they can download everything for free. And the other thing I thought that was so interesting is you have a variety of speakers, so they can choose the speaker to give the teaching time that they think would best resonate with their group, correct?
That's correct. In fact, one of the things we wanted to do is to make it where it had multiple teachers teaching the same material, not portions of the same material. Better Man's 11 weeks. So we have 5 speakers who teach all 11 weeks.
Yeah.
And you can go on and sample each one of the teachers. So we have different ethnicities. We have even Spanish, all Spanish Better Man. But you can survey those teachers and say, I think this one would best fit with our group.
Yeah.
And then you can take his 11 weeks and take your men through it. And I always tell pastors that who go, well, I want to take a look at it. I said, well, you can look at our speakers, and then if you're still not sure, just select some men in your church, some older men in your church, and do a test run with the material, and let them report back how well it worked with the men. And I think you'll be glad you did. And then you'll have proof that it can go bigger than just one or two groups. You need to take it church wide.
Well, I think that's a great idea. And what a novel idea. I've never heard of anyone that went to all the trouble to have the complete curriculum with different speakers. I mean, I've heard of different curriculums, a different speaker here or there, but that you went to the trouble to tape it all so that people could really find what's going to resonate with them
That's right.
and their group. And it makes it so simple and so easy for a church to use and at no charge. And then two, you have follow-up curriculum. Like you said,
Right.
it's the original 11 weeks. Tell us about some of the subjects of the follow-up curriculum.
Well, the follow-up curriculum does a little bit what the old men's fraternity does. It takes the definition of manhood that's introduced in the Better Man core series, 11-week core series. And it takes each one of those major responsibilities that God gave Adam to follow his word, to love and protect his wife. It takes each one of those key pillars, and we develop a curriculum around that, a 5 to 6 week curriculum that can follow up from there. And so that's what we're working on right now, to have that all available in 2023. And we've got some of it done, and we're working on some of it. So rather than just be introduced in the Better Man core, for instance, to loving and protecting your wife, in our follow-up curriculum, we'll have 6 weeks where a guy can study and interact with other men around practical ways to love and protect his wife, and be involved in a way that he gets to learn the world of women, which most men don't fully understand, and what a woman really needs from him, rather than guessing at what he thinks she needs.
And I'm wondering if you're going to glean some of that information from your books on marriage that you've
That's
written,
right. That's exactly what we've done.
because you have quite an impressive resume and list there.
Yeah. Well, we're just, again, trying to make a man manhood wise, but manhood wise from the eternal truths of Scripture, which have served every generation since the founding of time, really. I mean, they're not things that are new, they're things that are trustworthy. And I tell you, in the world in which we're living, if there's something that we need, it's the kind of wisdom that is absolutely trustworthy in a world that's just treading water, trying to keep, my head above the waterline.
Yeah, absolutely. That and the word is foundational and the word is truth.
Absolutely.
That is, and I know too, as you mentioned, that fourth pillar being raising children that will benefit society. I know I first heard of you through the Raising a Modern Day Night book, which, even though we're marriage champions, but some of our marriage champions might have known you through that as well. And since that is one of your pillars and one of your further curriculums for men's group, do you want to just unpack that? Oh, it's such a treasure. It means so much to me personally, two boys. Do you want to just describe that, just to give a teaser in case one of our champions doesn't know?
Well, I would just simply say, one of the things about our curriculum for men as being a dad is, first of all, to elevate that being a man, one of the key pillars of being a man is being a dad. And I think in today's world, we don't think of manhood in terms of fatherhood anymore. And that's why we've got so many young children being abandoned, because they're kind of an afterthought. It's not really what is essential for me as a modern man growing up. But what we want to do is restore the priority of children. And then with that restoration is to give men handles that they can connect with their children in a way that they see the value of that, but also in their children's faces, see the satisfaction of that. I mean, I tell guys all the time, there's two great wow moments in a man's life. The first is when he's in the birthing room and the doctor says, "Congratulations, Mr. Lewis, it's a boy or it's a girl." I mean, that's kind of a wow because you experience this miracle of life. But I go, guys, there's another great wow moment when it comes to kids. And that is when years later, it could be 20 years later, 30 years later, you're standing there and you look across the room and there's your son or there's your daughter, and you look at them and they're healthy and they're successful and they're making a difference in other people's lives and they're following Jesus. And you're just looking at them and you go, wow, that's my boy. That's my girl. And I go, there's a way to get to that moment, but it takes the skill, intentional skill of a dad to build in and have those experiences with your kids. And so we want to help men feel confident and feel passionate about raising the healthy next generation in a world that honestly, I'm more and more worried that we are discarding parenthood. And when you look at the birth, even the birth rate in America today, it's fallen below the replacement rate. And the reason is because this generation growing up has not been encouraged to be parents, and they think of them more as a burden than as an honor and as a gift. But that can be restored. That can be restored. But you got to have men talking to men about that and helping them understand the power of parenting.
Oh, that is so aspirational. When you talk about it, I could just see it all over your face, and you're just all in, and you want to be all in with you, because that is just so true. To when you do look across, and those of us who have children, and see your kids and say, wow, this
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Listen, all my kids are grown. They're all married. We've got, I think I mentioned we got 12 grandkids. And there is nothing that brings greater satisfaction to a man's life, especially in his later years, than to be able to enjoy the drama that's around me all the time with my kids and grandkids, because I see them winning. I see them winning in life because they know who they are and they know the key priorities to life. And I had a major role in that because I got to teach them how to do that. And God got to teach me how valuable what I did was. And I did it in many ways just simply by faith because the Bible taught me to do it.
And you're teaching this better through Better Man. You're teaching any guy can have this. This is
That's
not
right.
a secret that no one else can have. Every guy can have that joy that I see on your face. And
That's right.
truly, I want to inspire older men to get off their couches and to because that's what you said, how rewarding it is for an older man to really decide, we've all been kind of in our huddles for a while, and now to really to get out there and invest.
Yeah. In fact, I just met with a large church in Texas that just finished Better Man. They had like 400, 500 guys go through it. And what we did at that church before we started is that we had a meeting of a number of older men, gave them the vision to invite younger men to sit at their table and then to go through that experience. And when I met with them at the end, the first thing that the leadership said is, this is one of the greatest things we've done. Now get this, that we've done for our older men. You would expect them to say for our younger men, but he said the older men came alive because they see they still have a lot to give. But sometimes older men, when they get in their late 50s, 60s, they're empty nesters, they get seduced into thinking that life is kind of over, that I'm just going to live for me in retirement. And they don't think they really have any value for the younger generation. Let me tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. And when you give them ways to connect with the younger generation, and Better Man is one of those ways that they can invest and help younger men learn how to be successful early in life with the true priorities. And they see that actually happen when they take a faith step and invite these guys into this journey with them. Listen, these guys will never be the same having done that, because they'll want to do it again and again in other ways to invest in the next generation, because it just simply gives them life. The worst thing is to finish life living for yourself. What a small package. If you finish living for others, you're going to live in a vibrant, flourishing way to the end of your days.
Oh, well, that is truly what you are doing as a grandfather of 12, but you are living in a flourishing way. And I hope that this is not the end of your days. I think you have many, many years left to share, but you have been such a delight. Oh, Robert, it's been so wonderful talking with you today.
Well, Amy, it's been great to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. And let me just encourage your listeners. The things we've been talking about can apply to other areas, but for the men in particular, let me just say, if you want a journey that will both surprise you and delight you, go to betterman.com and take a look at the materials we're offering, but then implement it through your life working with other men.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It just was really a treat. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Amy. Have a great day.
Oh, you too. And Marriage Champions, if you'd like to find out more about Dr. Robert Lewis and Better Man, you can always find us at marriageinitiative.org.